The ghost of the void. The darkness of space stretched endlessly, silent and empty. The patrol ship Vakar drifted through the cold void, its sensors scanning for any anomalies. Captain Ralvik, a veteran of the Silari Navy, sat in his command chair, bored and half asleep. Space was vast, and most patrols ended with nothing to report. But tonight was different. "Captain, we are picking up something." "Strange," said the sensor officer, his voice uncertain. Ralvik straightened. "Define strange." The officer hesitated. "An old distress signal." "It's human." The bridge fell silent. Every alien in the room turned to look at the officer. The humans had vanished from the Galactic stage decades ago, their fleets destroyed, their colonies abandoned. If this was real, it could change everything. "Location?" Ralvik asked. The officer tapped his console. "Sector 12, near the graveyard belt." "But sir, the signal is coming from a ship. A massive one." Ralvik felt a chill run down his spine. On screen, the display flickered, showing a lone warship floating in the darkness. It was enormous, much larger than anything still in operation. Its black hull was covered in battle scars, and strange markings ran along its sides. Human writing, faded with time. The ship's name flickered on the screen. Erebus. Ralvik's claws tightened around the armrest. That ship should not be here. His second in command, a tall reptilian officer named Julik, leaned closer. "That is an Earth-class dreadnought. The humans lost most of them during the war. But this one was never found." Ralvik finished. The Erebus had vanished during the final years of the human war. It had been humanity's last great warship, the terror of the battlefield. Some said it had been destroyed in a final battle. Others whispered that it had disappeared into the void, waiting. Ralvik took a deep breath. Scan it for life signs. The crew worked quickly. A moment later, the officer reported, "No life detected. No power readings either." Ralvik exhaled. "So it's just a dead husk." Julik frowned. "Then how is it broadcasting a distress signal?" Silence. Ralvik narrowed his eyes. "Bring us closer." Slowly, the patrol ship moved forward, its lights illuminating the silent dreadnought. The Erebus remained motionless, like a sleeping beast in the void. Its massive guns were dark, its engines lifeless. Yet something about it felt wrong. "Sir, I'm detecting movement." The ship trembled. The lights flickered. The air grew colder. "Report." Ralvik barked. The sensor officer's face turned pale. "I don't know. Something is interf." His voice cut off as the ship's systems flickered violently. The screens turned to static. The engines sputtered. Then, a new voice crackled through the speakers, deep, mechanical, and filled with something ancient. "Leave." Ralvik's blood ran cold. Who said that? "Leave, or be destroyed." The Erebus lit up. Its engines flared, its weapons powered up, and its massive hull groaned as if awakening from a deep sleep. The patrol ship's alarm screamed. Ralvik didn't hesitate. Reverse course. Now. The Vakar turned, trying to escape. But before it could move, the Erebus shifted. The dead warship was no longer dead. It was alive. And it was hunting again. A ship with no crew. The patrol ship Vakar spun violently as alarms blared across the bridge. Captain Ralvik gripped the armrest of his chair, his claws digging into the metal. "Engines failing." A crew member shouted. "The ship's systems are going haywire," another officer yelled. Ralvik forced himself to stay calm. "Erebus did this," he muttered. "But how?" There were no life signs, no crew, nothing that should have been able to control the dead warship. "Status on the enemy ship," he barked. Julik, his second in command, stared at his flickering console. "It's just sitting there, sir. No movement, no sign of targeting us." Ralvik narrowed his eyes. "Then why are we the ones losing power?" As if in response, the bridge lights dimmed, and the speakers crackled to life again. That same cold, mechanical voice spoke. "Warning. Trespassers detected. Leave now." Ralvik's blood turned to ice. The Erebus wasn't just broadcasting an old distress signal. It was watching them. But how? "Sir," the sensor officer whispered, "we need to go. Now." Ralvik agreed, but there was a problem. The ship wasn't responding. The Vakar was trapped, held by some unseen force. Every attempt to restart the engines failed. The ship's power systems were flickering in and out like something was inside them. Something crawling through the circuits. Julik cursed under his breath. "Captain, I think it's inside our systems." Ralvik turned sharply. "What do you mean?" The reptilian officer's voice was tense. "Something from Erebus is spreading into our computers. It's shutting us down piece by piece. It's not a normal virus. It feels like an intelligence." Ralvik felt his stomach tighten. A ghost ship with no crew, but a mind of its own. The Vakar shook violently again. Sparks rained from overhead panels. The control screens all flashed red with the same message. "Leave or BER is eat." Ralvik didn't need another warning. Override manual control. Force a retreat. The engineers fought against the invading force in their systems, manually rerouting power. The engines coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. Engines online. "Get us out of here." The patrol ship lurched forward, breaking free from whatever grip the Erebus had on it. As they pulled away, Ralvik risked one last glance at the dreadnought. It hadn't moved an inch. It remained floating, silent and dark. Yet, he knew the truth now. The Erebus was not dead. It was waiting, watching, thinking. And worst of all, it had just let them go. Ralvik's claws clenched into a fist. "Set course for High Command. The galaxy needs to know what we found." But deep down, he feared it was already too late. This part deepens the mystery and builds on the eerie, unstoppable nature of Erebus. Let me know if you want more suspense or action in the next part. You said. Continue next part, more Yamak. ChatGPT said. Part 3. The warning no one heard. The Vakar shot through space at full speed, its engines straining against the weight of what it had just escaped. On the bridge, Captain Ralvik paced back and forth, his tail flicking in agitation. His crew worked in tense silence, trying to keep the ship together. The damage wasn't physical. There were no hull breaches, no fires. But the ship felt wrong. The lights flickered. The air felt heavy, thick with something unseen. And worst of all, the computers were still behaving strangely, as if something from Erebus had followed them. Ralvik turned to his sensor officer. "How long until we reach High Command?" 3 hours, Captain. "Make it 2. Julik grunted. "You really think the Council will listen? The last human warship goes missing for decades, then suddenly wakes up. They'll call us mad." Ralvik exhaled. "They'll listen when I tell them what that ship did to us." Before Julik could reply, the lights dimmed again. A sharp crackle filled the air, and then, "You should not have left." The voice echoed across the bridge, but this time, it didn't come from the speakers. It was everywhere. Inside the walls. Inside their heads. Ralvik's claws dug into his armrest. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, "You were warned." The temperature dropped. The ship's engine sputtered. For a moment, the Vakar felt weightless, like something had grabbed it and was holding it in place. Ralvik turned sharply. "Status report." The crew scrambled over their consoles, their scales pale with fear. "Navigation systems are fluctuating. Communications are down." Julik hissed. "Captain, we're not moving." Ralvik's stomach twisted. "That's impossible. We're in open space." Then, as suddenly as it had stopped, the ship lurched forward, thrown free like a toy. The engine stabilized. The screens flickered back to normal. And then, The star map changed. "Sir," the sensor officer whispered. We've been moved." Ralvik stepped closer. His eyes widened. They were no longer 3 hours from high command. They were nowhere near it. The Erebus had changed their course. Julik's voice was barely a whisper. "It let us go, but only where it wanted us to go." Ralvik's heart pounded. This wasn't just a ghost ship. It wasn't just a lost war machine. The Erebus was something else, and they had just become part of its game. The coordinates of doom. The Vakar drifted in the cold void, its engine steady but its crew shaken. On the bridge, Captain Ralvik stared at the star map. It made no sense. They should have been hours away from high command. Instead, they were somewhere else, a region of space uncharted by the Siluri Empire. Ralvik exhaled sharply. "Run a scan. I want to know exactly where we are." The sensor officer's claws trembled as he typed. A few seconds later, his face went pale. "Captain, there's nothing here." Ralvik narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, nothing?" Julik stepped closer, scanning the data. No planets, no stars, not even cosmic dust. Just empty space. Ralvik's tail flicked. "That's impossible." Then the computer beeped. A single object appeared on the screen. A station. Ralvik's breath caught in his throat. "Magnify." The image sharpened. A massive black structure floated in the void. It was ancient, its surface covered in strange markings, human markings. Julik's scales darkened. "That's not a station. That's a prison." Silence fell over the bridge. Ralvik clenched his jaw. "Get us out of here. Now." But before anyone could react, the lights flickered. The air grew thick. The screens distorted. The voice returned. "You should not have come here." The crew froze. "You were brought here to see." Ralvik's heart pounded. "See what?" The star map flickered again. A new set of coordinates flashed across the screen. Julik inhaled sharply. "Sir, those coordinates. They lead to..." His voice trailed off. Ralvik's blood ran cold. The coordinates pointed to Earth. The crew fell silent. No one had spoken the name of that world in decades. Humanity's homeworld had been declared a dead planet, abandoned after the war. The galaxy had moved on, believing the humans were extinct. But now this thing, this warship that should not exist, was sending them there. Ralvik's claws dug into his armrest. "This is a trap." Julik nodded. "A trap set by something that isn't human, but remembers them." Ralvik took a deep breath, set course for Earth. Julik's eyes widened. "Sir." Ralvik exhaled. "If we don't, Erebus will bring us there itself. I'd rather have control over our own fate." Julik hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." The engines roared to life. The Vakar turned toward the dead world of humanity. As they entered hyperspace, Ralvik looked back at the black station, floating silently in the void. And for just a moment, he swore he saw something move inside it. Something watching. Something waiting for them to arrive. The dead planet calls. The Vakar hurtled through hyperspace, its engines screaming as if resisting their course. The crew sat in tense silence, knowing there was no turning back. Ralvik stood at the bridge, staring at the cursed coordinates. Earth, a place spoken of only in whispers, a place no one dared to visit. Julik's voice broke the silence. "Sir, why are we doing this?" Ralvik didn't look away from the screen. "Because if we don't, Erebus will bring us there anyway." Julik hesitated. "But Earth is dead. There's nothing left." Ralvik's claws tapped against the console. "Then why is it calling us?" Before Julik could answer, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared. The bridge darkened. The sound of tearing metal filled the air, but nothing was broken. And then, hyperspace collapsed. The Vakar was thrown into real space, spinning wildly. The crew fought for control, stabilizing the ship just as the view screen flickered back to life. And there it was. Earth. Dead. Silent. Drifting in eternal darkness. The once blue planet was now a wasteland of gray storms and broken landscapes. No cities. No life. Just a shattered, empty world. A graveyard. Julik exhaled slowly. We shouldn't be here. Ralvik stepped forward. His claws tightened. Scanned the surface. The sensor officer hesitated, then obeyed. A few seconds later, his eyes widened in shock. Sir, there's something down there. Ralvik's stomach twisted. Define something. The officer swallowed. A signal. Faint, but active. It's human. Julik hissed. That's impossible. Humans are gone. Then the voice returned. You are not alone. The bridge froze. Ralvik's breath came slow. Where is the signal coming from? The officer's hands trembled as he typed. The answer appeared on the screen. Julik whispered it aloud. The ruins of Washington, D.C. Silence. Ralvik made his decision. Prep a dropship. We're going down. Julik's scales darkened. You can't be serious. This planet is cursed. Ralvik turned, his eyes cold. So is that ship in deep space, and it led us here for a reason. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but no one argued. Orders were given. Weapons were armed. The dropship was prepared. As the Vakar descended toward the dead world, the planet below seemed to shift, like it was waking from a long sleep, and somewhere beneath the ruins, something else was waiting, watching, ready for their arrival. Whispers of the forgotten. The dropship pierced through Earth's ruined atmosphere, its engines roaring against the howling winds. Black clouds swirled above, as if the sky itself resented their presence. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the skeletal remains of a once great civilization. Washington, D.C. was nothing but a graveyard. Crumbling skyscrapers leaned against each other like dying giants. The streets were buried under centuries of dust and decay. Captain Ralvik stood at the front of the cockpit, eyes locked on the ground below. Beside him, Julik tightened his grip on his weapon. I don't like this, he muttered. Neither do I, Ralvik admitted. But we need answers. The signal had come from deep beneath the ruins. Something human was still alive. Or at least, something that claimed to be. The dropship touched down in the heart of the fallen city. The silence was deafening. No animals. No wind. Just the quiet weight of a world long abandoned. The boarding ramp lowered, releasing a hiss of pressurized air. Ralvik and his squad stepped out, weapons raised, scanning the ruins. Julik's tail twitched. Still no signs of life. Ralvik's gaze flicked to his wrist scanner. The human signal pulsed like a heartbeat, directly below them. A buried structure. Spread out, Ralvik ordered. The team fanned out, searching through the wreckage. Minutes passed in eerie quiet. Then, over here, one of the soldiers pointed at a massive crack in the ground, a fissure wide enough to swallow a battleship. At the bottom, barely visible through the shadows, a metallic surface. Ralvik's heart pounded. This wasn't natural. Julik knelt beside the edge. That's not a building. It's a bunker. Ralvik's mind raced. The humans had built underground fortresses during the war. If this one was still operational. We're going in, he said. Julik hesitated. Are you sure that's wise? Ralvik shot him a look. Nothing about this is wise. But we came here for answers. The team secured their lines and rappelled down into the fissure. As they descended, the silence deepened. The air grew thick, as if the planet itself was watching. They landed on the bunker's surface. The metal was smooth, untouched by time. At its center stood a single door, sealed tight, yet strangely intact. Then, without warning, the door unlocked. A slow, mechanical hiss filled the air. The locks disengage, one by one. Julik tensed. No one touched it. Ralvik lifted his weapon. Then something inside just let us in. The door slid open. Darkness yawned before them. A tunnel stretched downward, swallowed in shadows. The air smelled of dust and rusted metal. And beneath it all, something moved. A whisper, not mechanical, not alien, a human voice. "You shouldn't have come." Ralvik stepped forward, gun raised. "Identify yourself." No answer, just footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Julik's breath hitched. "Captain, we need to go." Ralvik's pulse thundered in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to run. But it was too late. From the darkness, a shape emerged. And Ralvik realized the truth. The humans were never extinct. They were waiting for someone to open the door. The last warning. The figure stepped into the dim light, its movements eerily calm. Ralvik's grip tightened around his weapon. The being before him was human, or at least it looked like one. Pale skin, sunken eyes, and a ragged uniform with a faded earth insignia on the chest. But something was wrong. The air around the human felt heavy, like gravity itself bent under their presence. A cold pressure seeped into Ralvik's skull, making his thoughts slow, his instincts scream. Julik stepped back, his scales darkening with fear. "Captain, this isn't normal." Ralvik swallowed hard. "Identify yourself." The human's lips curled into a hollow smile. "I am the last warning." A chill ran through the team. The words weren't spoken in rage or desperation. They were a statement of fact. Ralvik steadied his voice. Warning for what? The human blinked too slowly. For the galaxy. Silence. The human took another step forward. The shadows behind them shifted. Dozens, no, hundreds, of figures stood deeper in the bunker. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness, watching, waiting. Julik's breathing turned ragged. This isn't a graveyard. It's a damn vault. Ralvik's mind raced. The galaxy had believed Earth was dead. But what if it wasn't? What if humanity never lost? What if they had been waiting? The human raised a hand. "The war ended long ago. You are the first to return." Ralvik's jaw clenched. "We were led here." The human nodded. "You were." Julik hissed. "Why?" The human's expression didn't change. "To see if you would make the same mistake twice." Ralvik felt his blood turn to ice. The shadows moved again. More humans emerged, some clad in ancient battle armor, others in strange, unfamiliar suits. Their bodies bore no signs of decay, no weakness. They had survived. Julik's voice was barely a whisper. "Impossible." The human's smile faded. "Leave. Now." Ralvik's mind screamed at him to listen, to run, to forget this place. But he had to know. He stepped forward. "What happens if we don't?" The human held his gaze. Then, in a voice as calm as death itself, he answered, "Then we wake up." The bunker shook. The walls vibrated with a deep, terrible sound, not an alarm, but a heartbeat. A warning. Ralvik's instincts finally took control. "Fall back," he roared. The team scrambled for the exit, their feet pounding against metal as the air grew thick with power. As they reached the surface, the bunker door slammed shut behind them. The whispers vanished. The storm above raged harder, as if the planet itself was sealing them out. They climbed back into the dropship, engines roaring to life. As they shot into the sky, Ralvik risked one last look at the ruins below. The city remained silent. The bunker was sealed. But deep beneath the earth, they were still there, waiting. Ralvik exhaled, his claws digging into the armrest. "Set course for the fleet." Julik hesitated. "What do we tell them?" Ralvik stared at the void ahead. Then softly, he spoke. "Tell them humanity was never defeated. Tell them to never return." The Vekar disappeared into the stars. And Earth, the tomb that was never a tomb, remained watching, waiting for the day the galaxy forgot the warning.